Hi, everybody. Because we covered so much in class last night, I wanted to do a separate video that was just over covering lines and sketches and the different things you can do with lines. So let's go ahead and get to that. Let me share my screen and we will begin. So as we talked about, this is the interface, but I wanted to make sure that we could discuss specifically just sketching and the different lines and tools you can use with sketching. We'll get to other things later and as they come up, but this is what we wanted to talk about. So to do a sketch, mouse over on the top of your toolbar, top left, mouse over this button here, create sketch. As it says before, mouse over something, a little blurb will come up and tell you exactly what's going on with that tool. You select the plane you're working on. I'm going to work on the flat XY plane, which is like working on a tabletop. And I'll be looking straight down. To change that, remember, look up in the upper right-hand corner. You have your view cube. You can just select top. It will snap and change your view to right there. Now we're looking straight down like we're looking straight down at a tabletop. Across the top here, you see our toolbar has changed. Now you have a line tool. You have a rectangle tool, which by default is 2-point rectangle. You have a center circle tool, which starts a circle from the center point. You have an ellipse tool. You have a fit point spline, which is how you can make a curved line based off of specific points. You have a mirror tool, which takes one and mirrors it across across a line that you decide. You can change the dimensions, and then you also have a rectangle tool, center rectangle, just like the center square, or sorry, center circle, but this bases it off a rectangle. Then you have a circular pattern tool, your sketch tool. You also have modifiers, which is why it's on the modify tab. You have a fillet, which is if you have a corner, it can create a curve between those corners based off of the diameter of a circle. You have the trim tool, which is chopping little bits off. And you also have an offset tool, which takes one line and copies that projected outward. Now, remember, these are just the default tools. If you click the bar below, you'll have a drop down and you'll have many more tools, and you could modify this toolbar by anytime you mouse over an actual tool. On the drop down, you see the three little dots. Click that, and you can add or subtract that to your shortcut bar or the toolbar above. Same thing with your modify tools, but I just want to go over the basics of these. So let's start left to right. Your line tool, you'll first select what plane you're working on, which you're already working on this plane, and you can just start clicking around. Now you'll see that you'll have both the distance, the length of that line, and if you tab over using the tab button, you can numerically input the angle that line is going against the previous line, not against perpendicular like up and down. It's relative to the last line. So you can play around with those. You can try to sketch something as the best of your ability, as close as you can. When you're done with the line, don't hit escape, press enter. If you press escape, well, enter will add that last line. If you hit escape, it will stop. And depending on what you're doing, it has happened where it deletes your line that you just did. But for this tool, you hit escape, it stops right there. You hit enter, it does that last line. So whichever you need to do. Now you can select individual line segments that you just made, meaning, oh, poop, I didn't need to add that one line. Let me zoom in, select that one line by clicking on it and hit delete. It'll cut that away. Cool. Other tools, you have a 2-point rectangle, which starts, you select one corner, and then you can select the other corner. Now you'll notice that inside this line, it turned blue inside this rectangle, but nothing around the two lines that I first made. That's because Fusion will show, and I can mouse over that rectangle. It gives that little blue glow to something that is enclosed. So you've got that rectangle, it's fully enclosed. That'll show you that that is a closed closed line. That means for later, when we go to extrude these, you can't really extrude a open line, meaning something that doesn't make it all the way back around. But say if I wanted to add and enclose these two lines that I made before, well, I can use the line tool again, and I can start by just mousing close to the first point that I made, and it'll automatically snap over to that, meaning my cursor will. And now I can go over to the next line, and it'll catch it again. It'll snap over. The line stops because it's completed the line between those two, meaning when I was drawing these, it would just assume that I wanted to keep adding lines, not so much here. But the line tool is still active. If you want to deactivate it, hit escape. If you want to do it again, go up there, select the line tool, or like it says, you can press L on your keyboard. The other thing is if I right click, you'll see this whole toolbar pops up right around my mouse. This is for workflow, so you can just make it a little bit easier. If you mouse directly up, it'll show you, oh, you can repeat the last thing you just did, and you can circle around. The reason why it has that little pie wedge showing is so you don't have to select exactly on the toolbox that's showing you. It's so you can just go get in the area. It's just ways to help you work a little bit faster as you like. But I'm going to repeat the line tool. That's just line tool, not repeating the last line. Now I can go select that one and that point. Now that enclosed, I'll hit escape to cancel out of the tool. Now that enclosed that whole space and it turned blue, showing you that's a closed thing. Cool. All right. Center circle. You're starting at the center and drawing outward. And it is showing you by diameter, not radius, diameter. The entire diameter of the circle, left to right, or however you're measuring, not from center out. It's a little bit confusing sometimes. So whichever I can enter that numerically. So let's say 23. Nothing at all on that. Now I made a dimension on that one. But what if I decide, oh, poop, I needed to make that bigger. What you can do is see where it says 23, double click that. It'll reactivate that text prompt, and now you can change, oh, I actually need it to be 25. Re-enter. Now it's gone back to 25. That's so you can change that. You can do the same thing on any of these. Now, there's no number bar going. How do I change that? Well, this rectangle I had, you see this other tool here, sketch dimension. You can just press D. If I click that, now I mouse over any one of these bars, the left to right or up down, click that, and now I haven't clicked anything else, but I'm not holding the button down. I just clicked, and now I'm moving the mouse over. This dimension bar is showing up. And if I click again, then it sets that dimension bar down and gives me a new prompt. Now I can say, oh, you know what? Instead of where I just drew that to 63.0001. Now, all right, I actually want that to be 64. Enter that. If I click enter, now it resized the rectangle. I can do the same for here. Pull out 16. I actually wanted that to be 12. There we are. And you'll see these little icons floating around the rectangle. We talked a little bit about constraints last night, but that is showing you that it's both horizontal and vertical. So let me show you a couple of the other tools. Ellipse. That's you select the center point, much like the center circle, just to the right. I go outward. I select the radius on one end, and now I'm mousing around, and I can select the radius going to the other direction for an ellipse. And that's how you create an ellipse. Remember, make sure to hit escape afterwards to get out of that tool if you want to finish working with that tool. Now, I showed you how to make straight lines and how to connect them. How do you make curved lines? That is a fit point spline. It makes a curved line basically connect the dot style you're actually selecting the points and it creates a curve between those points. And then you can adjust that curve. So let me find a new spot here. I'll start with 1 point. I'll zoom in. Now that first line is going to be straight because there's nothing in curve against. Now I select 1 and start the next. Now look at how it bends. You'll see that little green line showing me where the first line was. It's just a reference point. Now I can start putting dots wherever. Now, like my grid snap is on, so if I hover my mouse between any of those squares, I can kind of get wherever, or if I get close to the intersection of these squares, my mouse snaps to that. That's just to help you draw out. And I can just doodle this. There we are. And now I'll hit enter, not escape, hit enter here. That finishes it to the last point. So with a line tool, just straight line, when you're finished, you hit escape. With the spline tool, the fit point spline tool, you hit enter. I don't know why they made it not the same. But all right, now I have my points here, but I also have these little green handlebars. That's exactly what they're for. First, if I want to change, if I decide, oh, you know what, this point shouldn't have been right there at any of these on this line, you can click it, click hold, and I can drag this around. It will still snap to the grid, drop it there. Okay, cool. Now, when I select away from it, the line that is, my handlebars disappear. When I select the line again, my handlebars reappear. What these are for, and think of these exactly as that, handlebars, it's so you can twist that line around. And right now, it's just showing them as they are, and I'll show you what I mean. If I select one of the sides where the handlebars and click and hold, mouse over, oops, I can move this around and you'll see that I can both adjust how long that handlebar is and its position. And you'll see this green line, this green circle opening and closing. That is showing you how it's creating that curve. It's based off of a circle, and it's just showing you how big the circle would be. So if you need that reference, opening the handlebar makes that circle wider. Closing the handlebar makes that circle smaller. Twisting the handlebar rotates that circle. So you can adjust this, you can freehand just kind of play with this and get this to about the best where you want it to be. Again, hit escape when I'm done. That finishes the line. Okay. That's a spline. Now, what if I say, okay, you know what? I drew this fit point spline, but I actually want 2 of them. Well, I would want to use the mirror tool. However, there's a thing about the mirror tool. You select your item, and like what we've been talking about, you select anything, any tool, a toolbox pops up. So the mirror tool, well, then it says select mirror line. Well, what do you mean? I don't have anything. I can't select anything. So what you need to do is you have to have a line that's mirrored against. So let me cancel out of the mirror tool, and I'm going to create a line here. And I'm just going to create a line right here. Now I'm going to make 2 of these because I want to show you what I'm doing here. Now with the line tool, remember, hit escape, that finishes the line. With the fit point spline, you have to hit enter to finish the line. So I'm going to make 2 lines here. One there. The length doesn't matter, anything like that. Hit escape, finish. Now I can mirror across either of these lines. But what I want to make sure to do is I don't want these lines actually being like active. So what I can do is change this to what's called a construction line. Now, if you go into your sketch palette toolbox here, the first line on here is called line type. We're not going to mess with the center line right now. We're just going to go with construction line. What that does is it will change a line, anything, and you actually, any sketch item, I can make any of these circles, these squares, this weird amorphous shape, these lines alone, I can make these what's called construction lines. If I select that, now I can't select it previously. I have to select the line first, now make it a construction line, which you can also do by pressing X on your keyboard or hitting this construction tool. Now it has changed that line to a dotted line. And what that is that becomes just a reference line, as in it's not your actual sketch that you're trying to work on. It's just there to help you guide things. So it's not an interactive line anymore. You can still actually click it and all that such, but it's just so you can help yourself and call that a reference line. So now I can use the mirror tool. I select my object, that squiggly S line or spline curve. Now I can select the mirror line. I could select that first one. It mirrors it across that dotted line, my construction line. Or I cancel that and select this line. Now it's mirroring it way over here. Why is it mirroring it way over here? Because it's basing the distance between your actual curve you're wanting to mirror to the line. So this distance here is equidistant to this distance here. If I'd selected the shorter line, it's a lot closer. That's how that works. Okay, so that's a mirror. And you'll now see I can still tweak this, but they're mirrored, they're linked. So if I adjust one, it does adjust the other one. So that is the difference on mirror lines. Now, what if I want to say make something that's based on, like, say, a circle, but I want to tweak that, be that maybe I draw some circles along the edge here. See, my mouse is a crosshair, is a plus right now, but when I get close to the edge, it changes to a X, and a blue X at that. Same thing on this rectangle, anything like that. What that's showing is that your starting point is on that edge right there. So I'm going to make a circle here. I'm just drawing this out. Doesn't matter the size. Now, wait, these are dotted lines. I didn't turn off the construction line. So let me escape out of the circle tool, select that circle. Now press construction line again, or X. Now it's turned it back into a regular line. Now it's turned it back into a regular line. Now we talked a little bit about how Fusion automatically divides things up. So I can now select the insides of the intersection between these two items. So I can add more circles. Still doing construction line. Forgot to turn that off entirely. Make sure that is deselected. Okay. No construction lines. And I'll just do another one inside. Okay. Just for whatever. But say, all right, now it looks like I'm typing Gallifreyan or something. You do you. But one of the things we didn't talk about last night is some of these modifier tools, mainly things like trim. Well, what if I don't want to have to select things like this, or I want to actually remove parts? Well, the trim is how you do that, and that's the same with any other program. Trim. Press T if you like for a hotkey, but now I can chop sections out based on line segments. You see, as I mouse in here, it will highlight the section that I'm mousing over the blue line with red, and that shows you it's planning on trimming that out. So now I can say, let me chop that out. You'll get a warning because it was that part was started with a baseline. It's all right, you could ignore it. I can also trim out, say, like that. Now I'm starting to get like some weird Mickey Mouse with a problem thing. So that's how the trim tool works. You could now just select things as you like. If I were to put a fit point spline and draw it intersecting with that circle, hit enter to finish. Now I can also use a trim tool to chop chunks away from there. And I can also trim those little tails off. There you go. So that's how the trim tool works. Basically the same as most any trim tool works. So, all right, I've made this weird amorphous shape. And I'll tell you what, let me finish trimming some of these chunks away a bit more. Yeah, apparently we are kind of riffing on a Gallifreyan thing. Okay, I've made this weird amorphous shape, but you know what I actually want is I want to make like a barrier between, or like a tracing edge around this. I can use the offset tool. And this, just like when you used to doodle in your notebook, you'd start with one shape, then draw it a little bit larger, a little bit larger, a little bit larger. That's what the offset tool is. So I select the offset tool, I select my line, and it automatically starts to create something based off of the standard increment of 1 millimeter. I can now have this little slider. If I mouse over that, I can hold and drag it out. Now look at how the line changes the further I move away from the shape. It just kind of blends stuff out, and until effectively you keep going far enough out, and it just smooths the whole thing out. Just like your doodles you would make, the larger the shape is, the less fine detail it gets, and it adjusts automatically. You can also go negative, and it will, if you put a negative number in or slide the slider inside, it will make that border internal. Really neat tool. Um, Again, you can put it in numerically also. So if you wanted to actually, oh no, I actually want that point or negative 0.75 instead of just whatever, there you go. Really neat tool. And the reason you can do this now, if I mouse over it, now I can just select that edge. And when we get to extrusions and stuff, that's how I could create like a border or things like that. So those are the basic tools on those. There's a bunch more in here. Play with them. The other one I wanted to show you is fillet. And I'll show that on a corner. This is meant to curve a hard angle corner, like a rectangle, 90-degree corner. I select fillet. I select between the tool or the two sides. Now I have a slider again. I can click and hold and drag that slider, or I can enter it numerically. So instead, I'll say, 1.5. I'm just riffing off of whatever. All right. Yes. Warning. I changed that. I get a couple constraint icons that those are now working off of a tangent. That's the tangent icon, but we'll talk about those in another point. I just want to focus on the line tools. Now I can repeat that fillet. Yes, I can keep going up, clicking fillet, or right click. I bring up my recent toolbar, go up, and now I can do the same. Now, it's the one thing that irritates me on this part is Fusion does not repeat the same number that you just put in. It just has its default settings. So if I wanted to continue to make all of these the same, I can type it in numerically. The other thing I can do is mouse over where it says your radius of 1.5. That's what the fillet is based off of. If there were a circle right here, and I'll just draw one with that center point of 1.5. Now remember, the circle bases off diameter. The fillet is off of radius. So actually that would be 3. Now you can see what I mean. That's what that fillet is basing off of. But I'll go ahead and delete that because I don't want that circle confusing me or you. Now, if I mouse over that radius point, numbers pop up. D6, 1.5 millimeter. What that is referencing is this diameter, but just assigned as a number, D6. But and again, it's super confusing. D6 seems diameter, but then it's measured on radius. That part just confuses me too. But if I mouse down on the mouse over this one, it says D7. Those are my reference numbers. So what I could do is I'll repeat the fillet tool. Oops, now it's on delete. I'll repeat the fillet tool here, but instead of adding a number, I'm going to type in lowercase d 6. Now you see it changed to that point. It's a reference now. So now if I went back, double clicked on the number and changed that one. So let's make it 2.5. Now it automatically changed that one too, but not this one. So let's change the fillet. Oops. Change here. Now I'll type in D6, all referencing back to that same one. You just have to remember what the number was. And if anything, I do it sometimes, just keep a notepad handy and write it down. Now you've got the references. And say I wanted to now make a border on that, I can use the offset tool, select there. Now I can create a border around it. Let's just say one. Oh, not, oh my God, no, not 1,000. 1.5. Neat. So there you go. That's how you can use those main tools. Now, one other tool I did want to show you is your patterns. Now, if you go down to create, there's a couple of options. Mirror, you have circular pattern, rectangle pattern. So let's first start. I just want to make a couple of features here. We'll make a circle, and then I'll make a square, and we can, of course, adjust those however we like. Finish that out. Okay. Now you'll see on squares, especially because I use the starting the centers rectangle, square, rectangle, it's the same thing in this tool. It does automatically create some construction lines. Those are just for reference, so you can more easily find the diagonals between. If I make this more of a rectangle, same thing. It just has those as reference lines. It's for your convenience. But say I want to make a bunch of these squares around a circle. I can use the circle tool. You see my toolbox pops up. What object do I want? Select, I want this object. Now what I did there, first I clicked just that line. Well, I don't want just a line. I could double click that line. Now it selects that whole perimeter. Or like we talked about, you can use your selection tool. If you select and drag a box from the right, it will select everything that touches. I don't want that. If I select and drag from the left, it will select everything that is only inside of that square, that selection box. Great. Now, since this is a circle pattern, what's the center point that I'm rotating around? Now, I just drew the circle as a reference. I want that center point. Bam. Now it created multiples of that square around a circle. Now, the reason they're angled like that is because it's taking that object and rotating it around using that center as a reference point. Now you'll see some different tools here. Now for one, well, it starts as 3. What if I want more? You can use the slider. To the left, it has a plus. To the right, it has a minus. As things get more complex, honestly, I would highly recommend not using the slider, but adding in pieces numerically, because as things get more complex, it will actively calculate the thing, and it really can bog down a compressor. Your processor, your computer. So doing it numerically really helps. You don't have to do it in a full circle. You can now select in the center angle spacing. What if I just want it by the angle? Now I could, another slider pops up. I'm still putting in the same number. The quantity has not changed, but now I have another slider where I can select how far around that circle point do I want those. There's a bunch of different options. You can also do symmetric. Now it's going out from the center point and sliding more or less. That's your numbers. Or the arrow slider, how symmetrical from the original spot based off of the center point. You can get pretty complex with it, but if you're just trying to do a few, there you go. So I'm going to go back to, we'll do angle. That's fine. Okay. And now I could go around and I could trim things out. You know, if I wanted to add around, I can trim little chunks away for no reason, really, just showing you some options. Just taking little chunks away. Okay. Click escape. That finishes it. And there we go. So the last thing you're going to want to do, and I'll hit F6 to expand back out. The last thing you're going to want to do is hit finish sketch. That finishes things out. And then you can go to extrude and make your object three-dimensional. Now, if you realize, oh, poop, I actually wanted to change that, go look at the very bottom. Your history slider has just the sketch icon. Right click on that. Now you have a bunch of different tools you can work to. What we're looking for is the edit sketch. Now we go back in. Now I can go back into the sketch tools and work a little bit more. Make your adjustments, finish sketch, you're all set. So those are the things I just wanted to show you. I just wanted to do a short video on specifically your line tools. I hope that helped clear things up. Again, I encourage you to just play and experiment. And also, I'm only one source of information. This class is only one source of information. There's a wealth of videos on YouTube and such, specifically from Fusion 360 and Autodesk. They're really good. They might say the same things I'm saying, just in a different way. Hopefully that helps too. But also, as with always, if you have any questions, let me know. Hope that helped. Hope that informed you a little bit. And we'll see you in class next week. Thank you.